So, we were considering traversal algorithms for binary trees. There are 3 traversal algorithms. In the pre-order one, you process the root vertex first, then the left subtree, then the right subtree. And in the in-order one, the left subtree is traversed first in the in-order manner, then the root, then the right subtree is traversed in the in-order manner. In the post-order traversal, first the left subtree is traversed in the post-order manner, then the right subtree is traversed in the post-order manner, then the root. Now, given a pre-order sequence of the vertices visited and the in-order sequence, you can construct the tree in a unique manner. Similarly, given the in-order sequence and the post-order sequence, you can construct the tree in a unique manner, but given pre-order and post-order, you cannot construct the tree in a unique manner. So, let us see how to construct the tree given a pre-order and a in-order sequence. Let us take this example. You have vertices A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, I, J, L. Okay. Now, let us I, J, K, L. So, let us see how to construct the tree from this pre-order and in-order sequences. The pre-order sequence is given like that, the in-order sequence is given like that. Now, what do you understand by this? In the pre-order sequence, the root is visited first. So, A is the root of the tree. So, this is the root. So, these vertices will constitute the left subtree and these nodes will constitute the right subtree. And here we can see that this is in a different order, but that constitutes the left subtree. Now, if you look at this way, this left subtree is again traversed in the pre-order manner. So, B will be the root. So, B is the root here. So, if you look at here, B is the root. So, D is the left subtree of that and H, K, E occur on the right subtree. So, D will be here and H, K, E should occur on the right subtree. How do you arrange these vertices? E, H, K, they are in the different order here in the pre-order. Now, again the root will come first in the pre-order. So, E will be the root and H, K should occur on the left subtree or the right subtree. So, here E is the root and H, K occur on the left subtree. So, both H, K and H and K should come in this side. Now, again H should be the root in the pre-order. So, H will come like this and then because K occurs on the right side, K will occur like this. This is the way the left subtree is built. Now, look at the right subtree. These are the 6 vertices occurring in the right subtree. Again in the pre-ordered manner, you can see that the first node is C. So, C is the root. Here C is the root. So, Fi should occur on the left subtree of C and Glj should occur on the right subtree. Again, if you look at this one, F comes first. So, F should be the root of the left subtree and here you see that I occurs on the right next to F. So, it should occur on the right subtree. So, it will be like this. Now, Glj should occur on the right subtree of this and because G occurs first, it will be the root. So, G will be the root of this tree and Lj will occur at the left or right subtree. But here again you find that both L and J occur on the right side next to G. So, they will occur on the right subtree and J occurs first here. So, J will be the root and L occurs to the left of J. So, L will occur like this. So, this tree can be built in a unique manner from the pre-order and the in-order sequence of the vertices visited. Now, we have also seen that these trees, binary trees can be used to represent arithmetic expressions and for evaluating arithmetic expressions. And if you traverse such a tree in a pre-order or in a post-order manner, what do you get? So, let us take this example. This is a binary tree where the internal nodes are operators and the leaf nodes are some operands. if you traverse this tree in a post order manner, what is the sequence of vertices visited and how do you write that sequence? You see that in the post order, left subtree, right subtree, root, that is the order in which you go. So, you will see that the order in which you traverse will be given by A, B, C plus star D, E minus plus A, then the right subtree is B, C plus, then star, then this right subtree is D, E minus, then the whole thing is plus. This is called a postfix notation, postfix notation for arithmetic expressions. Now, the expression will be evaluated like this. You will have a stack in which operands will be transferred one by one. So, A will be transferred, B, then C, then when plus an operator is transformed, it operates, it is a binary operator, it operates on these two, and the result of this B plus C is kept here. Then the next one is, next operator is transferred and it operates on these two. So, you get A in the stack, you get A star B plus C, then you transfer D to the stack, transfer E, then the operator comes minus, it operates on these two and you get A star B plus C, then you get D minus E, this operator operated on this. When this plus is transferred, it will operate on this and you will get the expression A plus A star B plus C, this is 1, plus D minus E. This is what you get. This is the arithmetic expression and this is represented by this. Similarly, you can also have the pre-order way of representing that. So, in the pre-order way, if you represent, this is the notes, it will be plus star A plus B C minus D E. This is the order in which the nodes will be visited and this is called the prefix notation. Prefix notation. These are the ways in which an arithmetic expression is represented internally in the computer by the compiler as an intermediate code. Then the machine code will be generated. So, we have seen some facts about search trees and trees as data structures. In undirected graph also you can talk about trees. So, now let us take some undirected graph and what do we mean by a tree? Take undirected graphs. A tree has no cycle, okay. Something like this is called a tree in an undirected graph. Look at this. There is no cycle in this graph. Such a thing is called a tree. A tree with n nodes has n minus 1 edges. This also you can very easily see. There are several properties about trees which can be considered. from any book on graph theory. We will not go into the details of that. But for any graph also, not necessarily a tree, but any graph, you can define what is known as a spanning tree. Let us see what is a spanning tree. A tree T is said to be a spanning tree of a connected graph if T is a subgraph of G and T contains all vertices of G. These spanning trees are very important in several practical applications like computer networks and so on. You would basically require a spanning tree, and sometimes it is also very necessary to calculate the minimal spanning tree. Let us see what is meant by that in a moment. Look at this graph. It is a graph and a subgraph of that. Some of the edges are labeled by B and some of the edges are labeled by C's. Look at this. There are how many vertices are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 vertices are there. Look at the edges B1, B2, B3, B4, B5, B6. Okay. These 6 edges B1 to B1, B2, B3, B4, B5, B6 form a subgraph of this, a connected subgraph of this, and it has the structure of a tree. There is no cycle in that. Obviously, you can see that the graph has 7 vertices and there are 6 B edges. They are called branch edges. The subgraph consisting of the B edges B1, B2, B3, B4, B5, B6 is called a spanning tree of this graph. Because it is a tree, it is a subgraph of G and also it contains all the vertices of G. The other vertices are C1, C2, etc. There are 8 more edges. Now, you can see that when you have a spanning tree consisting of the branches, just add one C edge, just add C1, then you get B1, B3, B5, C1, that forms a cycle. Even if you add one other edge from the graph to the spanning tree, you will get a cycle or a circuit, and that is called a fundamental cycle, fundamental circuit or cycle. This is obtained by just adding one edge of the graph, which is not a branch, to the spanning tree. The spanning tree of a graph is not unique. You can have several spanning trees for a graph. For example, take this graph. It has got 4 vertices. This can form a spanning tree. This can form a spanning tree, and so on. There can be several spanning trees. Now, sometimes it is of use and very interest to find out what is a minimal spanning tree. Minimal spanning tree. For example, if the edges have weights, say 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, something like that. There are 5 edges in the graph and the spanning tree will have only 3 edges. If you choose this spanning tree, the weight of the tree will be 1, 7, 5, which will add up to 13. If you choose this tree, it is 1, 2 and 3, the weight will add up to 6. Okay. So, this is the minimal spanning tree in this example. You are interested in finding the minimal spanning tree because if you want to have telephone connection and all that, sometimes the tariff is calculated based on the minimal spanning tree. There are several important and interesting algorithms for calculating the minimal spanning tree. One is Prim's algorithm and another is Kruskal's algorithm. They are well known algorithms for finding the spanning trees. So much about spanning trees. Next we shall see what are meant by cut sets and cut vertices. In a connected graph G, a cut set is a set of edges whose removal from G leaves G disconnected, provided removal of no proper subset of these edges disconnects G. This is the definition of a cut set. I will read it again. In a connected graph G, a cut set is a set of edges whose removal from G leaves G disconnected, provided removal of no proper subset of these edges disconnects G. Now look at this graph. In this graph, if you remove this edge, this edge, this edge and this edge, these 4 edges if you remove, you get 2 components which are not connected. So let us consider this. I will draw it again on the board. Now these 4 edges if you remove, mark the notes. If you remove these 4 edges, you get 2 disconnected components. But if you remove, even if you leave one of them, it will be connected. If you have even one edge present here, it will be connected. Even if this is present, it will be connected. If this is present, it will be connected, and if this is present, it will be connected. So you have to remove all the 4 edges to get 2 disconnected components. Even if you remove any subset of this, any 3 or 2 or 1 of this, still the graph will remain connected. So such a set is called a cut set. Now look at this graph again. If you remove these 3 edges, then also the graph becomes disconnected like this. But now the cut set consists of these 3 edges. So you may have several cut sets for a graph. Some of them may have 2 edges, 3 edges like this. The cut set having the minimal number of edges is the minimal cut set, and that is called the edge connectivity of the graph. Each cut set of a connected graph G consists of a certain number of edges. The number of edges in the smallest cut set, that is the cut set with the fewest number of edges, is defined as the edge connectivity of G. So the edge connectivity is defined as the size of the smallest cut set. Look at this graph. In this graph, if you remove these 3 edges, you may have, this is a cut set. You remove these 3 edges, you may get 2 disconnected components. If you remove these 4 edges, you may get 2 components and so on. But if you remove this vertex along with the edges connected to that, you will get 2 disconnected components. So, by removing one vertex, you are able to get two disconnected component, and that is called vertex connectivity. Sometimes by removing one vertex, you may not be able to get disconnected components. You may have to have several vertices removed to get disconnected components. For example, if you take something like this, say if you remove any one vertex, along with the edges associated with it, you will get only a connected component. But if you remove two vertices, if you remove this vertex and this vertex, you will get these two vertices, they are disconnected components. So, here the vertex connectivity is defined to be 2. In this graph, if you remove this vertex, then it becomes disconnected, one connected component here, one connected component here, and the disconnectivity is obtained by removing this vertex. So, this graph has vertex connectivity 1. So, let us define vertex connectivity in a proper manner. If you look at the graph, we find that although removal of no single edge disconnects the graph. Here, if you remove any one single edge, the graph will not be disconnected. If you remove these 3 edges, it may become disconnected. Here, if you remove these 4 edges, it may become disconnected, and so on. But removing just one edge will not leave the graph disconnected. But if you remove this vertex, it will become disconnected. We find that although removal of no single edge disconnects the graph, the removal of the single vertex V does. It disconnects the graph. We define another analogous term called vertex connectivity. The vertex connectivity of a connected graph G is defined as the minimum number of vertices whose removal from G leaves the remaining graph disconnected. So, a vertex connectivity is defined as the minimum number of vertices whose removal from G leaves the graph disconnected. If the vertex connectivity is equal to 1, it is called a separable graph. The graph is called a separable graph. The graph which we have seen earlier, this is a separable graph. We have seen that this separable graph has 8 nodes, and how many edges are there? 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 edges are there, right. Now, this also has similar structure, 8 nodes, but you see that the vertex connectivity here is 4, vertex connectivity. If you remove any 3 of them, still the graph will be connected. Similarly, edge connectivity also here is 4. If you want to have connection between 8 nodes which represent say some stations or something like that, you would rather like to have a structure like this than this, because if some fault occurs here, if this node fails in this network, if this node fails, there will not be any connection from this portion to this portion. So, you would like to ensure as much of connectivity as possible, right. So, if you take such a structure, then even if one node fails or even if two nodes fail, there will be some connection between the rest of the node, other nodes. So, you will not have any problems. So, this sort of a idea, the definition of vertex connectivity plays an important part in practical applications. Now, we have also seen about trees in undirected graph. Let us see one or two more definitions about trees. The eccentricity EV of a vertex V in a graph G is the distance from V to the vertex farthest from V in G. So, if you take a graph like this, take a vertex, the eccentricity of that vertex is the distance or the length of the path, simple path, from this node to the node which is farthest away from that. And the vertex with minimum eccentricity in a graph is called the center of the graph G. Now, in the particular case of trees, let us see what are the eccentricities and what are the centers. Look at this graph. This is a tree, you know that this is a tree, it has got 6 vertices. The distance between this node A and this node B is 2, this is length is 2. The distance between this node and this node is 3, the distance between this node and this node is 3. So, the distance of the farthest node is 3, so the eccentricity of this vertex is 3. Similarly, you can see that the eccentricity of this vertex is 3, but the eccentricity of this vertex is 2, because these two nodes are at distant 1 from this and the other, this node is at distance 1 and these two nodes are at distance 2. So, the eccentricity of this vertex is 2, the eccentricity of this vertex is also 2 in a similar manner. The eccentricity of these 3 vertices are 3, because the distance of the farthest point is 3. And similarly, if you look at this graph, the distance for this node, the farthest node is this, this or this, and the length of the path or the distance is 4. So, the eccentricity is 4 here, the eccentricity is 4 here in a similar manner, the eccentricities are 4 in these cases. The eccentricity will be 3 here, because there is a node which is at distance 3 from here, the eccentricity of this node is 2. The center of a graph is defined as the vertex with minimum eccentricity. So, if you look at this vertex has the minimum eccentricity that therefore, it is the center. Here these two vertices have minimum eccentricity, so they are centers. And you can very easily prove that every tree has 1 or 2 centers. How can you do that? You can just see that in this case, if you remove the pendant vertices will definitely have more eccentricity. You end up with an edge, and both these vertices have eccentricity 2 and they form the centers. Now, do the same thing here, remove the pendant vertices, then you end up with a graph like this. These two are pendant vertices now, remove them also, then you end up with a single vertex, and you end up with a single vertex that becomes the center. So, either you have 2 centers or 1 center in a graph, in a tree, and this can be easily proved. So, these are some facts about trees, cut sets and cut vertices and so on. Now, let us see what is meant by a planar graph. A planar graph is defined like this. a graph G is said to be planar if there exists some geometric representation of G which can be drawn on a plane such that no two of its edges intersect. Take for example this graph. Consider this graph with 4 vertices. The edges intersect like this, but the same graph you can draw like this. We can also draw in a different way. Instead of drawing this edge this way, you can draw it this way, in which case no two edges intersect. And if there is some way of representing the edges such that no two edges intersect, if there is some way of drawing the graph on a plane such that no two edges intersect, it is called a planar graph. This is a planar graph. Is every graph planar? Obviously no. There are examples of graphs which are not planar. There are two graphs known as Kuratowski's two graphs which are known to be non-planar. Kuratowski's two graphs. What are those graphs? Look at this graph. This is a complete graph with 5 vertices. This is a complete graph with 5 vertices. This is denoted as K5, and this is not a planar graph. Try to draw it in a planar manner. You have 5 vertices, so you can connect like this. There are 10 edges. You can have one like this, one like this, no problem. 7 edges you can draw like this. The edge between this you can draw in this way. The edge between this you can draw like this. What is the other edge? The edge between this and this. If you try to draw it this way, you have to cross this. If you try to draw this way, you have to cross this. If you try to cross either this way also, you have to cross this edge or you have to cross this edge. Either way you have to cross one edge. So, you can draw 9 edges without crossing, but the 10th edge you cannot draw without crossing. So, this is an example of a graph which is not planar. Then the other graph which we considered is Kuratowski's second graph, which is known as K33, that is the utilities problem. We had 3 houses and 3 utilities, gas, electricity and water, and they have to be connected and so on. So, there are 3 houses like this A, B, C, and they have to be connected to gas, electricity and water. And how do you do the connection without the lines crossing over? Here again, how many edges are there? There are 6 vertices and 9 edges. From each one you have 3. So, there are 9 edges and 6 vertices, but you cannot draw it without crossover. Suppose you draw like this, you can draw this, you can draw this, 5 of them you can draw like this. Then A to B you have drawn, A to C you have drawn, E to C you have drawn, E to A you can draw like this, 6, 7, 8 you can draw like this, but what is the one which is remaining? E to C you have drawn, E to A you have drawn. If you want to draw from E to B, if you draw like this, it will cross this edge. If you draw like this, it will cross this edge. Anyway, you cannot connect E to B without crossing one edge. So, this particular graph you cannot draw on the plane without crossover. There will be at least one crossover there, and this is known as K33, and these two are examples of, generally it is drawn in this manner. It is known as a bipartite graph, bipartite graph. The set of vertices are divided into two portions, and all edges are such that they have one end in one portion and another end in one portion. Such a graph is known as a bipartite graph. This is an example of a bipartite graph. It is a complete bipartite graph on 3 plus 3 vertices, that is why it is denoted as K33. Now, we have seen that these two graphs are not planar. How can you find out whether a graph is planar or not? And also, in planar graphs you talk about regions. For example, take this example. This is a planar graph. You can see that it is drawn on the plane without any intersection. These are called regions. This is one region, this is one region, this is one region, this is one region, and so on. So, if you draw a graph on the plane without crossovers, there is some connection between the number of edges, the number of regions, and the number of vertices. What is this? Let us see what is the relation. Okay. Now, what is the condition that a graph is planar? What is the condition that a graph is planar? Now, you see, if you have a graph and if you have a self loop, you can, wherever you want to have self loop, you can draw it in a small manner, and so without any problem that will not constitute any crossover and so on. Similarly, if you have parallel edges between these two, if you have parallel, you can draw them as close as you want without any crossover, and other crossovers will not be affected by this. So, without loss of generality, you can remove loops and parallel edges. Also, if you have a graph like this, some graph, if you have a vertex with the degree 2, instead of having this, if you draw a single edge, that is not going to affect the crossover in any way. So, you can remove such vertices and merge the two edges. So, what you can do is remove vertices of degree 2. That is, if you have vertex of degree 2 like this and merge the two edges, If you have a degree of, if you have vertex V of degree 2, you can remove this and then merge the thing, and this will be replaced by an edge like this. This will not affect the planarity or non-planarity of a graph. Now, if you do that, what happens? If G is a graph and G dash is obtained from G by these operations, then G dash is said to be homeographic to G. G dash is said to be homeomorphic to G. Now, if a graph does not contain K5 or K33 as a subgraph or any graph homeomorphic to it, then it is planar. It should not contain K5 or K33 as subgraph. If G does not contain K5 or K33 as subgraph or any graph homeomorphic to it, then it will be planar. This is both necessary and sufficient condition. We will not go into the details of it. Let us take the result as it is. So, this is known like this. You can find out whether a graph is planar or not. Now, as I told you, if you have a planar graph like this, this is a graph with 5 edges and 4 nodes. How many regions it has got? It has got region 1, region 2, region 3. 3 regions. And what is the connection between them? The connection is brought out what is known as Euler's formula. E minus f is equal to E minus n plus 2. F denotes the number of regions, F denotes the number of regions, E is the number of edges and n is the number of nodes. Here look at this, how many regions you are having? You have 3 regions. What is E minus n? E is 5 minus n plus 2 is 3. So, you are having 3 regions here. It satisfies this. Euler's formula like this brings out the relation. Suppose I have one more edge between them like this. How many regions I have now? 4. Obviously, there are 6 edges now. So, 6 minus 4 plus 2 is 4. 4 regions I have. This is known as Euler's formula. And you might have heard about the famous 4-color problem. What is that 4-color problem? A planar graph is sometimes also called a map. Planar graph. Look at this. This is some and each region I can color with different colors. For example, you can use red here, green here, blue here, yellow here. You can color this with blue, you can color this with red, and you can color this with green, and so on. How can I color a map which is a planar graph with minimum number of colors? People have seen that you require at least 4 colors. Take the simple example, this is a planar graph. To color this, you require at least 4 colors, you cannot do it with less than 3 colors. Suppose I use any other color, instead of yellow if I use red, green or blue, again 2 of the regions will be, 2 of the adjacent regions will be colored in with the same color. So, I want to color this so that no 2 adjacent regions get the same color, but I want to use the minimum number of colors. Long back it has been shown that 4 colors are necessary, you cannot do with 3 colors, and 5 colors are sufficient, that was also shown quite early. But whenever people tried, they were able to color the graph, at least up to 40 without any problem they were able to color with 4 colors. So, it was conjectured that 4 colors were enough, but it was not proved. It remained as a conjecture for a long time, it remained as a 4 color conjecture for a long time. But a few years back it has been proved, this conjecture has been proved to be correct. That is, 4 colors are sufficient to color a planar graph such that no 2 adjacent graphs get the same, no 2 adjacent regions get the same color. This is called the famous, this is the same famous 4 color problem. So, we have seen that a necessary and sufficient condition for a graph G to be planar is that G does not contain either of Krotowski's 2 graphs K5 or K33 or any graph homeomorphic to it, to either of them. Now, we have also seen that a planar graph can be colored with 4 colors, so that adjacent regions do not get the same color. We have also seen Euler's formula connecting the number of edges, number of nodes and number of regions or the number of faces, which is denoted by F, by this formula. Let us derive this formula. How do we get this formula? Take any planar graph. Suppose the number of triangles is given by 3, the number of quadrilaterals is given by K4 and the number of pentagons is given by K5 and so on. You may have a graph like this and there may be some triangles, the number of such triangles is given by 3. Now, count the edges. The external will be a polygon, again the external thing will be a polygon. Internally you may get some quadrilaterals, pentagons, etc. If Kr denotes the number of polygons with r sides, count the edges. The number of edges in the triangles will be 3K3, the number of edges in the quadrilateral will be 4K4 and so on. If you count, that will sum up to this. But each edge will be adjacent to 2 regions. So, when you count the edges covering a polygon, each edge will be counted twice. So, you get 2e. So, this sums up to 2e, and the number of faces or regions is given by K3 plus K4 etc. Kr is equal to F. One of them will be an external region. Now, if you take each node, the total angle around that is 2 pi, that we know. There are n nodes. So, if you count all the angles, it sums up to 2 pi n. But how do you get that? There are some polygons, if a polygon if p-sided, the sum of the internal angles adds up to pi into p minus 2, sum of the internal angles. Sum of the external angle adds up to p plus 2. Now, out of this triangles, quadrilaterals, etc., one will be an external polygon, one you have to count as external, rest of them as internal. So, if you count the number of angles depending upon these polygons, the number of internal angles of the triangles will sum up to pi into 3 minus 2 k3. The sum of the internal angles of the quadrilaterals will sum up to pi into 4 minus 2 k4 and so on. And the sum of the internal angles of r-sided polygon is given by this. But you must remember that one of these polygon is it covers the outside region. So, for one polygon out of this, you must use pi into p plus 2 rather than pi into p minus 2. So, we add, we do not know which is the outside polygon. So, whatever it is, for one of them you have to add 4 pi. So, if you count like this, the angles around each node, that will sum up to this quantity. And you know that, let us simplify this expression. This is equal to 2 pi n. This you can write as pi into 3 k3 plus 4 k4 etc. plus r kr minus twice k3 plus k4 2 times minus pi into 2 times k3 plus k4 plus kr plus 4. And this quantity, by this we know that it is 2e and minus pi into 2, and this quantity by this factor we know is f plus 4 pi, and all this is the sum of the angles around each node. There are n nodes, around each node the sum of the angle is 2 pi. So, this will add up to 2 pi n. Now, if you divide by 2 pi, this will come to E minus f plus 2 is equal to n. You will get E minus f plus 2 is equal to n, or E minus n plus 2 is equal to f, which is known as Euler's formula. And by this we get a result about regular polyhedron. A regular graph is one in which each node has the same degree. For example, if you take this is a regular graph because each node has degree 2. A regular polyhedron is one in which has got all the faces of the polyhedra are regular polygons. For example, if you take cube, each face is a square, it is a regular polyhedron. If you take a tetrahedron consisting of equilateral triangle, that is a regular polyhedra. And by this result about Euler's formula, you can show that there can be only 5 regular polyhedra. The Greeks in ancient times, they realized that there can be only 5 regular polyhedra, and that result is proved by Euler by making use of the Euler's formula. The 5 regular polyhedra are this: tetrahedron, cube. Tetrahedron consists of 4 triangles, cube consists of 6 squares, octahedron consists of 8 triangles, icosahedron consists of 20 triangles, each face is a triangle. Dodecahedron, each face is a pentagon, and this has been derived from Euler's formula. So, these are some results about graph theory. The graph theory itself is a very wide field. What we have seen is only a glimpse of what is graph theory. This has a lot of practical applications in electrical circuits, computer networks, flow analysis and things like that. So, next we can consider some more properties about relations.